Hey everybody, and welcome to this tech video, I guess. I hope you're all doing well. I'm doing pretty well myself. I just realised I've started recording at 11:11. That's pretty cool. Shame it's not the 11th of July. But there you go. Anyway, what we're here to do today is to have a look at whether or not it's a good time to buy right now. So I see this question a lot, pops up in forums. I see this pop up a lot in comments as well from people asking, is it a good time for me to go out and buy a computer or parts or whatever? The short answer, as we'll kind of see, is no right now, but it's also yes. No, but yes. And I'll explain why in this video, or at least I'll give my kind of opinions on it. Nothing is a definite thing. There's always different bargains out there, different, things you can get, and people will find good prices and stuff like that on stuff. But I'll kind of explain my reasoning behind why it's not a great time to be buying right now, but in some areas it is a pretty good time to buy right now. So let's start. I'm on a price comparison website here. We've got up the Asus RTX 2080 Super on here, and I wanted to kind of have a look at the history of the price of this card, and also talk about why it's raised in price rather than continue to go down in price. As most tech things will go down in price as you go across their lifespan. That makes sense, right? New tech comes out, or just, things depreciate in price, cars, everything you probably buy depreciates in price as you go through. That makes sense. However, some issues sometimes arise where things start to raise up in price. We live in a supply and demand society. When demand increases and supply is low, then prices go up. That's the way it is. So let's take a look at the 2080 Super. Back in kind of when it came out, it was around £800. I think I don't have this exact card. I do have a 2080 Super. I have the Aorus one, and I think I paid around about $750, something like that, I believe, for it at the time. I didn't get it when it first came out. I think I was getting it around this time, maybe in the summer, of 2019-ish. So what we saw was kind of a natural thing where your kind of price of it would start to go down. You can see here as you kind of get into November, and then once you're hitting November and December, you see the price really dropping in January. Reasons for that are you got things like Black Friday sales, Christmas sales, January sales. Your average price of it is gonna go down, but then we see it suddenly spike back up again around about the end of February into March and stay at that same price for a while. So what happened here, I'm sure you're all aware, is we had a pandemic, and Asia was obviously one of the first places to get hit. That's where these cards are made, and as a result, factories closing down, the supply of these cards stopped essentially. So you have the first hit there where supply is low. That then coupled into an increase in demand. So you can see it kind of stayed low for a while, but then around about May we started to get a real price increase, and you can see here it was actually trending higher than when it first came out. So a full year after it came out, the 2080 Super was more expensive than when it first came out, which is kind of crazy. The reason for that was people, so we already talked about the supply was low, the demand began to increase. People were looking to upgrade their rigs or build computers because they were having to do more things at home, whether that's working from home, whether that is they're doing more hobbies from home. So for example, you might be a person who loves to go out, socialize, and you might be a casual gamer on the side, and your consoles or your 5-year-old PC might get you by on that. But when you're suddenly stuck at home, constantly and not allowed to go out or whatever, it's starting to hit you that actually I need to upgrade a few things. And so people were doing that. As a result, the demand rose. When supply is low and demand rises, suddenly the price will rise up. And that is exactly what has happened. A lot of these cards just weren't in stock in a lot of places. People were struggling to find them because they were just sold out and there was no new ones being made. And that is when the prices will start to skyrocket, because people will pay a higher price for something that they want, or they will perhaps go down a skew lower. So they might have wanted a 2080 Super, but they could only afford a 2070 Super, for example, because of this, because they will still be like, well, I kind of have to get one, whether it's for work related reasons. And you might be like, well, why does somebody need a 2080 Super for work? But if you're an editor, video editor, if you're self-employed, or if you're doing lots of kind of heavy data work, you can actually use a graphics card to do a lot of that work for you. So that's why we've seen the prices of things rise up. So that's the kind of initial first stage to say it's a bad time to buy, because prices are now as high as they've ever been. You can see here, you're looking at this card for about £800. It launched for about £800. So, but that's to say now is a bad time to buy because the price is going to go down. So you're better off saving. So this predicts that the price is going to go down to about £700. I'm not entirely sure it's going to go down that low on there. I don't know if this will take into account things like the pandemic, etc. We have seen that factories in Asia are starting to open up again. A lot of Asian countries have kind of weathered the pandemic very well. Japan in particular has been incredible. And so we may start to see a lot of these factories reopening and the supply kind of coming back out there. We're also seeing a lot of the countries starting to kind of reopen and get back to some semblance of kind of normality, which may mean the demand actually lowers, where people are then being able to go out, etc. So you kind of have that you have that kind of thing there where it's say, well, actually, we're maybe starting to see now in the next couple of months, we might start to see these prices kind of go down a lot. I wanted to also have a look at maybe like a Ryzen 7. Do we want the Ryzen 7 3700X? Let's have a look at that. We got the graph. It might be a bit too new for a price graph. We have kind of got it here actually. There we go. So you can see here that the Ryzen 7 has started off at about £300. And again, it has kind of tapered off quite a bit. You can see now it's getting down. We did start to see that rise again. You can see that kind of rise back up. And it's now at a level where it's not at the same level as when it first released, but back kind of, I think, as the beginning of the pandemic, it was getting to quite a cheap price, and then it has started to rise, but it has kind of plateaued a lot over the last few months. We will probably see this particular chip, the 3700X, lower because the 3700 XT has come out, although what you actually are getting for that is debatable. So at least the performance gains of the XT is pretty bad. Now, another reason why a lot of people are saying to hold on and wait to build a PC right now is because of these massive rumors around the new Nvidia cards and the new AMD graphics cards as well. So we don't know anything for certain right now. There's been a few leaks and stuff like that, but how you take the validity of these leaks is kind of up to you. So the predictions are that we'll get new Nvidia cards this year, and quite possibly new AMD cards this year as well. AMD have always struggled with high-end cards, and it seems that they're the ones they're going to release. Nvidia have always had the monopoly on the high-end cards. There's nothing that could really touch an AMD. There's nothing that can touch a 2080 or a 2080 Ti really. They just don't. AMD haven't managed to be able to be competitive at that. They are very competitive at the lower end, probably more so than Nvidia cards. But we are likely to see the new Ampere series cards coming very soon. However, soon could mean within 2 months, could mean 6 months. We don't know right now. When they release, we will see the price of the 2000 series cards lower. We will see the price of the 1000 series card lower. That's a natural thing. Every time you have a new model come out, you will see the price lower. So people are saying, well, hang on, don't buy a 2060 now, because you're either going to get it cheaper when the 3000 series come out, or you will get a 3000 series card. That will be better. It's pretty sound logic. I totally get it. With kind of how it is. However, I will say that there's some caveats to that, which are important to kind of remember. So people seem to have this like memory lapse of the launch of the 2000 series cards. I appreciate it was a while ago now. It feels like a long time ago. But the reality of the 2000 series compared to the 10,000 series was there was very little performance gain on a price like comparison level. So Nvidia pulled what I feel is a very sneaky maneuver, really, which was that they basically changed the name SKU of their cards. What I mean by this is we had the 2080 release, and so everyone's like, okay, we compare this to the 1080. If we compare it to the 1080, the 2080 here, you're seeing big gains, 22%, 14%, 23%, 23%. But my argument was always the 2080 costs way more than a 1080 did at launch. The 2080 was like 200-300, I think it was like over £200 more at launch than the 1080. And so here it kind of says 372 to 300. I'm not kind of taking those as like fact. I seem to remember it being like the essential thing was that the 2080 was the price of a 1080 Ti at launch. So in my opinion, that's where you compare it, because you can't turn around and say, well, that's like comparing a PlayStation 4 Pro against an Xbox One. Well, the price of a PlayStation 4 Pro was like twice the amount of an Xbox One, so it's unfair to compare it. You'd have to compare it to an Xbox One X, which were similar prices. Just because the naming SKU was the same, or it looked like it was the next model up, that's not, in my opinion, the way you do it. So when you actually compare the 2080 to the 1080 Ti, what you're actually seeing is a lot lower increases. So apart from like PUBG and Fortnite here, which you're seeing good increases on, you're seeing 3%, 5%, 5% there, a little bit extra on some other games. But you were probably only seeing like a 5 to 10% increase across the board. And that's really not that much. I owned a 1080 Ti, and I saw this and I was like, there's absolutely no point in upgrading here. It's a complete waste of money, because you essentially would be like, okay, I could sell maybe my 1080 Ti for, I don't know at the time, you could sell it for, but you'd end up spending, an extra maybe £300 to get a 2080, and all you're getting is a 5 to 10% increase on a lot of your games. So that didn't really make much sense. Obviously, you have to factor in the ray tracing, which was a thing. However, I can say this as somebody who has a 2080 Super now. Ray tracing is still badly supported across a lot of games. Sure, we've seen some big games come out with it, but the reality is that, we haven't seen the really big like series kind of take it on yet. We haven't seen things like, the biggest games out there being played at the minute Fortnite, Warzone, none of them are ray traced. GTA 5 is massive still with people. It's not ray traced. Minecraft is going to become ray traced, but it isn't right now. The big MMOs that everyone plays, none of them are ray traced. Whether it's WoW, whether it's Elder Scrolls Online, whatever it is. Overwatch, massive game, not ray traced. CS:GO is not ray traced. So what? If I look through my Steam library, I go on here. Out of the 300, 57 games or 517, I don't know what I've got on here. Probably about 5 of them are ray traced, to be completely honest with you. So ray tracing, I love. When it's in a game, I think it just looks incredible. Control, Metro Exodus. The demo we've seen for Minecraft is out of this world, but the reality is it has not been picked up yet. So saying, oh yes, but the 20 series was ray traced is not a great argument, because it just isn't at the same level that it hasn't been picked up. Now, when we have the release of the new consoles, games, they'll have ray tracing to a certain extent. It won't be quite as good as you will get on PC, I guarantee that. There we might start to see the big game developers. So we might see an Assassin's Creed with it. We're definitely going to see Cyberpunk with it. We're going to see, I think, as games kind of pick up, we might start to see things like Destiny pick up ray tracing. We might see these games kind of incorporate into their games, because they know that it's an advantage on the new consoles that they can kind of use there. So I don't think the ray tracing thing is a great argument. It was always going to be like an early adopted thing. I feel disappointed in how badly it's been adopted since its release. It's been a couple of years now, and we still have not seen it as a staple in games in any way, shape or form. People are saying that's going to change with the next series. The Ampere series is going to be even better for ray tracing. They've taken it on from here to the next level. But the reality is, the only way ray tracing becomes mainstream is if everybody can do it. So sure, if everybody is now getting these new cards, if everybody is getting your PlayStation 5 and your Xbox Series X with that ray tracing, then the developers will start to put it in, because it won't be a waste of time or money for them. So ultimately, when we see the next series of cards, we probably will see the 20 series go down in price. So that will be a good time, I think, to buy the 20 series. However, I'm very skeptical of what sort of increase we see. Nvidia, we see it all with all three of the big tech companies, Nvidia, AMD, and Intel. Whenever they release their new models, there is not the increase people expect. People used to champion AMD as being like this, they're the consumer company, they look after them. But we've seen now, we've had the 3700, the 3700X and the 3700 XT, and the actual performance difference in those chips is very minimal. So is that them being consumer friendly? Intel, they do the same things. They release chips with not a lot of they do just enough an increase to just keep them just above AMD, at the real top end, in terms of gaming. But are they really putting their all into it? Until someone actually makes that leap, which forces other people to actually go, wow, we have to make our leap bigger. They're all just doing these small incremental ones where it doesn't actually, where people, because at the end of the day, the second-hand market is great. We'll look at that a bit later. But, if somebody currently has a Ryzen 7 3700, they're not realistically going to upgrade to an XT, because the performance isn't there. If the performance was there, they might go, oh, I'm going to sell my Ryzen 7 and I'm going to get the XT, because I can see that I'm going to get an extra, 15 frames per second, or it's going to make my rendering time so much better, or it's much better at doing this or whatever. But it isn't. So it's not going to work like that. So people saying hold off until the new NVIDIA GPUs release, and then either pick one of those up or pick a 20 series up, cheaper, or even the 10 series should be cheaper. I'm just very suspicious about what sort of increase we will see across it, and what the prices will be. Let's not forget a 2080 Ti. It's still like £1,100 right now. Let's have a look at the 2080 Ti. The Strix one of that. Let's see where the price has gone for that, because I don't remember the price ever being low for this. Yeah. So, when it started, it was 1,300. We then had the drop to like 1,200. Where we're at now is 1,200. It's never dropped in price. And £1,200. When the 1080 Ti released, I think it was like £800, something like that. It just isn't going down. Let's have a look at the 1080 Ti. Might not have it, actually. 1080 Ti, have we got something in here? Let's have a look at the Asus, the Strix. It might not have it. But you can see it released like 800 quid. So how can you compare this to 2080 Ti, which released at £400 more? Like, it's just not, it's insane. You can't, wouldn't take these, because I don't think you can buy them new anymore. I think they've been discontinued. But yeah, the general gist of it is that, like, if you have the Ampere come out, you might see a 2080 Ti drop, but how much will a 3080 Ti cost? 1,500 minimum, I would say. So you then bring that down the line to probably the most popular one. The most popular card that people buy is the 2060. I won't do the super, we'll do the normal one. Let's, for the sake of continuity, let's try and get the same Strix one. Yeah, you can see started off 470 quid, dropped down quickly to 400, stayed the same, and then it's very much plateaued kind of since sort of February time. I would imagine that's gone down like that because of the 2060 Super, which has come in. But you can see, like, it was pretty much 380 quid for a long time on there, and the 1060 was nowhere near that price at all. If we look at the 2060 Super, see how that's kind of gone about. Look, it's actually gone up in price recently. So we have these big dips here, which I imagine are sale prices. We could get it in a sale. Imagine being able to get it for 340 quid, eh? Released at 529, and then at the minute it's up to 476-ish, like 470 as a price there. So, not in those terms, you see it's not a great time to buy graphics cards and things like that. I thought what we could look at is, say, the used market. I think there is a pretty good used market currently for these cards, but you run into the risk. I've done the kind of eBay video before to say you can get some bargains. I think a lot of people are looking to sell now certain cards because they're worried they're going to lose a lot. It's going to go, like, I mean, for example, a 2080 Super, I mean, that's terrible pricing. Like, you shouldn't get that card, but they're not the ones which are there. Let's go to auctions. And let's go to the ones which are ending soonest, because then you get a true representation. So this one has 1 day left, £500. That's my exact card. Refurbished, though. I'm not necessarily keen on refurbished, but you've got this palette here, which is £600, 9 bids. It's got a day left. I'd see that going up a bit there. Yeah, so I would imagine a lot of these will probably finish off at around about 650 to £700. We haven't got one that close actually. If we look at the 2060, just straight up 2060. Wow, 140, is it parts only? Yeah, so it's broken. We got the Asus Strix at £400. No one's bid. That's a lot, to be fair though. You had 18 bids on the 2060 Mini. 235 is a good price for it. So you can see you can get some good prices compared to what you were buying it, straight up for. But you obviously run the risk. You don't know what someone's done with this card. They could have been mining it day and night and trashed it or whatever on there. So the question is, like, what is, if you want a gaming PC right now, what is it good to buy? What are you getting value for out there? Well, definitely one thing that you're getting value on is memory, so RAM. I don't know if I can actually have a look at computer RAM on here. DDR4 RAM. Here we go. Let's have a look at some like normal Corsair Vengeance prices. I don't know if this will go back, but yeah, you can see here price of RAM has gone crazy. So RAM, these sticks of RAM would have cost you, like when they came out, like 120 quid, and then they went down price down to about 60. And then what happened was some of the metals that they used for the RAM became a lot scarcer, and as a result the prices really went up. You can see they went up to more than what they originally released for. It was a terrible time. 2018 was a terrible time to buy RAM. It really was. You were getting screwed on it. And then it tumbled again when the prices came back, and now we're seeing it at its pretty much its lowest ever price. So RAM's a great thing to buy right now. If you're looking to upgrade your RAM, or if you're looking to upgrade or just looking to build a computer, you're going to get value from your RAM now. Value is in, it's the cheapest it's ever been. It's a good time to buy RAM on there. So yeah, and depending on what you want, there's some good deals out there. There's some bad deals out there, but I think you can generally get like 32 gigabytes for like, well, here you've got it for $120, which is 3200, which is pretty good actually. Pretty good RAM there. It's for your Ryzen. You ideally want to go 3600 for a Ryzen, and you're going to add prices if you want to add in your Corsair Vengeance. But 16 gigabytes of RAM is also really good for gaming nowadays. I don't know if we'll get to a point where 32 will be required for games while we're still on DDR4, but it's can be. I have 32 gigabytes of RAM. It's really nice for certain games, or certain like Football Manager or Civilization, stuff like that. It helps, and it's quite fast RAM. But also just for doing day-to-day tasks, is quite nice to have 32. But it's certainly not reasonable to kind of expect people to have it in there. So for example, if we wanted to go like 3200 now, what's the cheapest price we can get? Yeah, not 4 gigabyte sticks. And also, if you buy RAM, you want to go for at least 2 8 gigabyte sticks for 16. Don't get one 16 gigabytes. It will be slower. You having dual channel will be much better for you. Usually motherboards will have 4 RAM slots. You put them in, like, usually consult your manual, but you would usually put them in like every other slot. That will give you the kind of dual channel, the fastest there. So we want a couple of 2x8 sticks. I don't know if we've got. We can put the speed up as well. Actually, I wanted the minimum speed as the between 3200. Now, to be fair, if you're buying an NVIDIA CPU, you are going to be fine to get slower RAM. Doesn't really matter with NVIDIA, but for the sake of it, what I would recommend at the minute would be like a Ryzen CPU. I just think for all-round stuff, you're just getting more bang for your buck there. So let's just put in this T4 stuff here. 61.99 for 16 gigabytes of RAM. That's a really good price. It's a fantastic price. I'm in the American thing here. I'm from the UK, but obviously most people watching will be American, so we'll stick with dollars. And then CPU wise as well. God, that's actually very difficult to say. As I said, you have your Ryzen, you have your Intel. Intel at the high end are much better for gaming. Like you do get more out of it, but you also get an incredibly high price compared to it. So, for example, a i9, the 10900K is the best. Oh, somebody keeps ringing me. Is the best like gaming CPU you can get. However, it's over $500, and the increase you would get off of just a Ryzen 7 3700X, which is like half the price, would maybe be 10 frames per second, which maybe you can justify that. 10 to 15 frames per second, maybe you can justify that and say to yourself, well, yeah, actually that's worth it, I think. But for me personally, I don't think I could kind of go there. I think the real sweet spot at the minute is a Ryzen 5 3600. You don't need the X, it doesn't really increase that much. You get like 0.2 gigahertz more, but otherwise it's not there. But I think like bang for a buck, like the Ryzen 5 3600 is what you want right now. It does come with your CPU cooler. It's not, if you really want to save money, you can use it. It's not 100% ideal, but honestly, it absolutely does the job. If you wanted a CPU cooler, I see people going for like these AIOs just because they look fancy. Like, sure, but in my opinion, get the performance right, then upgrade things to look nice, if that makes sense. I know people always want to have things look nice, but you can get a nice like fan cooler that looks good without the need for to spend $70 to $100 on an AIO. I think it's a little bit dumb. You can get like the Cooler Master 212 $44. It's really good. Has an RGB fan in it as well, so people can be satisfied there. It's going to give you good cooling. You won't have to worry about your temps, especially on the Ryzen 5 at all. And getting something like the Corsair H100 is complete overkill. It's ridiculous overkill. Like, yeah, it'll be really cool, and it'll look good, but it's a complete waste of money. Then you get to motherboards, and at the minute, obviously Ryzen and Intel use different motherboards. It's an important distinction to make. Prices will change on motherboards. What we have seen is a new release of motherboards, the B550s. So at the minute, you can have a variety of different motherboards with Ryzen. It does get quite confusing for people. So you can see here, PC Part Picker will automatically select compatible. So you can see the compatibility filters on. So all these items will be compatible. However, it does get complicated sometimes. You might have to flash the BIOS, which means updating it for the chip to work, etc. on some of the older ones. But B450 will always work, X570 will always work, and the B550 will always work on these chips. The B450 is the kind of real like value proposition at the minute, but it has been limited in its particular ability to get hold of it right now. So the Tomahawk Max has always been like a really good card for people to use. What I will say about you can see the price has gone up though, as we kind of expect on everything. What we'll say about motherboards is people are always like, well, what's the best motherboard I can get? Motherboards, it doesn't really work like that. A motherboard is not going to increase your performance unless you are an absolute top-end overclocker with all the best parts. Buying a $100 to $150 motherboard compared to buying a $500 motherboard will make a difference. But if you are just even for me, who has a 2080 Super Ryzen 7 3700X, I won't get increased frames by paying $500 dollars for a better motherboard. Motherboards are all about functionality, so you have to choose one for what you want it to do. Do you want it to have Wi-Fi? If so, you get the one which is Wi-Fi. You know, things like, are you going to be adding in loads of what memory speeds is it compatible with? How many memory slots does it have? Some might have 2, some might have 4, depending on how you want to do. What's the max amount of memory you can put in? For example, this board is 64 gigabytes. You might be like, oh, actually, because I'm doing a lot of work, I actually want to be able to get 128 in there. So then you would look at the next thing. How many PCIe slots have you got? What's the onboard Ethernet at? Is it 5 gig? This is 1 gig. How many SATA ports have? What the USB ports on there? Does it have like USB-C port or something like that on there? People might these are things which people might find useful. That's really the difference where it comes in. It's not really about if I get a better motherboard, I'm going to get much better performance out of it. It doesn't really work. You can see here some have only 32 gigabyte potential with 2 memory slots on there. People also buy them for the effects they have, lighting wise, and for the look of them and stuff like that fit in, which you can do what you want in that perspective. But from a kind of pure value kind of perspective, the Tomahawk is a generally very, very well respected board. We'll add that in there. $124. It's quite high at the minute for that, for what it is. You might be able to get it cheaper than that. Looks a bit high. Storage wise, that's another thing that has really come down in price right now. If we look at the price history for a Samsung 970 Evo, so for like a 1 terabyte one, these seem very high. Why is the Evo Plus like cheaper? I don't know. It's a little confusing for me. Let's have a look at a 500 gig one. Yeah, so you can see when this first came out, this was around about £200, and you can see it's dropped all the way down now to like £900. I think you can actually find it cheaper than that nowadays, to be fair. No, actually they're saying about $100 here for a 500. You can obviously get cheaper drives than the Samsung, like 970, but they're generally a very good maker of M.2 drives on there. And the price of storage has gone down really, really cheap. There, in my opinion, there is absolutely no point in anyone buying a hard drive unless you are really, really trying to get your price per gigabyte down. So you might be like, listen, I have a lot of stuff I need to store. But if you are just literally playing a gaming PC, like a 500 gigabyte or a 1 terabyte drive is plenty in reality. And there's no point. I see some people have builds where they're like, yeah, I'm just playing it for games, and they'll have like a terabyte of SSD storage and then like a 2 terabyte hard drive, and you're like, what are you using the hard drive for? Like nothing. Like I do have a hard drive in my computer. It's the same hard drive I've had since my very first computer. It's like the only part which is still there from the original computer I had like 5-6 years ago, and I literally use it to store my videos on. That's the only thing. I save my videos onto there because my videos are quite large files. If I didn't record, I wouldn't have that in my system. It's of no use to me. It's so slow. It's completely like pointless. It's literally there because like otherwise I'd have to buy another drive to store my videos on. So for people who are buying, it's just no real point. If we look at what's cheapest, you can see like your price per gigabyte, it is still cheap nowadays to get a hard disk drive. So if you are worried about storage, if you have something to store, whatever it might be, then yes, you do start to get cheap. But the reality is that the speed of some of these drives is pretty atrocious on there. So and then you can start to get up to like some of the kind of like PCI 4X ones, which are super expensive right now, or just some of the SSDs, which are just stupid price. It's worth noting as well for the motherboards here. The X570 currently supports PCIe 4 for your. If we can have a look at form factor, we might need to actually put a yeah. Oh, my stomach's rumbling away. So PCIe 4 drives are the fastest you can get right now. They are super expensive right now. They will go down in price eventually, and they will be the standard that people go to. You can get 800 gigabyte one here from Intel for $261, which is actually not terrible. But you would need a B550 or an X570 motherboard to be able to use that. It wouldn't work on the other one. And seeing as it's like a crazy price right now, there's like no point. But storage is something where if you're looking to buy right now an upgrade, storage is at a good price still. Let's get rid of that, and let's stick to M.2. Yeah, and it's absolutely up to you what you want to do. Like, so for example, this Western Digital 500 gigabyte is a good price. It will be slower than the Evo, but whether that is going to bother you in any way, shape or form, is very debatable. You would notice a difference between if you use like a Western Digital Blue hard disk drive compared to the SSD, but the reality is, unless you're doing a lot of intensive work, you probably won't notice much of a difference between the 970 or that. So I'd probably put like a 1 terabyte NVMe in there. Some people do like to have just a completely separate one for games, a completely separate one for your you just get a small, like, I don't know, another 500 gig one just to put all your Windows on and stuff like that. You don't have to. It's 70 quid, which you could save. I personally do that, but I don't really think it makes much of a difference on there. So I'll actually delete that if we were going for more of a kind of budget-y type build. Video card, I guess, is where you really get into the nitty-gritty. I see a lot of people asking on forums and stuff like that, like, what graphics card is good to get right now? And the answer to that is really simple. Like, what monitor do you have? Because this is the thing where I think people really miss the point with PCs, is like, PCs have so much versatility in what you're buying and what you do. My stomach is growling away. They have so much versatility, and some of that versatility comes in the display, but people often buy their computer and then they don't really leave much of a budget left over to actually buy a monitor. So generally what you get in monitors nowadays is you get your 1080p, your 1440p, and your 4K. 4K is obviously top of the line. I wouldn't even really necessarily recommend 4K for a monitor because, and I've had one, you're not really getting the full benefit of 4K in so I had a 27-inch 4K monitor, and it looked good, but the reality is it didn't look any better than like a 1440p one to just the naked eye, unless you're really going in close, because it's too small a display to really notice that pixel density. TVs are great, you're getting your 50-inch TV, which is 4K, because it's nice and big, so you do really notice the difference there. But when you get down to monitors, I think 1440p is the sweet spot right now for monitors. People love having high refresh rates. I see people as well turning around and asking and saying, like, well, I want to play games at 1440p, 144 hertz, or I want to play games at 1080p, 144 hertz. What graphics card do I need for that? And the answer is, well, what games are you playing? Because if you're playing Fortnite, if you're playing CSGO, Overwatch, those games run pretty well, and you can actually have a fairly low-end card, turn a couple of the settings down a little bit, and you can fly on them. If you wanted to play a very intensive game, I think Warzone's pretty badly optimized. I've actually only played that on PlayStation, so I haven't played on PC. But say you're really into like Assassin's Creed, or you really like playing really graphically intense games, you're like, I really want to play Cyberpunk, it's like max settings. That's completely different league to something like, say, Fortnite. So Fortnite, you can get away with like an old kind of 1060 or something like that, and you'll get a pretty good frame rate on a 1080p monitor. But if you're like, I want to play Cyberpunk at 1080p 144 hertz, you're going to need something a lot more demanding than that. So it does come down to kind of what you want. I've always felt that an RX 580 is a really great card for 1080p gaming. It's really good value. Even you can see you can get them for like, let's have a look actually. So RX 580, yeah, you're getting them for about $160. Like, some of these are stupid. You obviously wouldn't pay that much for it, but like, yeah, you know, like you could buy a Sapphire or something like that. You're getting important things to note, which can make a difference in your graphics card, is your boost clock and your core clock. So you can see some of these have different ones. So for example, the MSI Armor will run slower than this XFS card, even though the XFS is cheaper, because the core and boost clocks are run differently. Yeah, so that's just kind of just the way it goes on those things. I've also felt the 580 is just a really nice kind of sweet spot. You'll get good frame rate in like as I said, the games like Fortnite, stuff like that, at 1080p. With that, if you wanted to play something a bit more demanding, you might have to go up to something like a 2060 Super. But again, you're adding in, you're going from 180 quid to 400 quid for that. And then if you want to play at 1440p with high frame rates, you're probably looking at 2070 Super, which again is going up really high. Interestingly, if we look at just price, what they got for a 2060 Super. So 369 is the kind of cheapest one there that they do, or like $400, and then the 2070 Super is $500. So it's a little bit more. If you wanted to play your like 1440 like 2K, shall we say, 1440p games at high refresh rate with everything turned up, you would actually probably need a 2080 Ti, because I have a 2080 Super, and the reality is, if I have everything on like ultra for something like Assassin's Creed Odyssey, I'm getting 60 to 70 frames per second, maybe a little bit more in different areas, stuff like that, and I'm perfectly happy with that. And if I turned a few things off ultra, yes, I would get more frames and stuff like that. But it's worth noting that, like, for maybe something like Cyberpunk, my 2080 Super, I'm expecting to get 60 frames per second at 1440p with my 2080 Super with the ray tracing turned on. That's what I'm hoping to get. I'm not expecting it to be a high frame rate game unless I start turning things down, but I'll be happy with 60 frames per second on that game. But yeah, 2080 Super then starts getting into kind of 700 territory, and then you would need to start looking at your CPU as well, because you might bottleneck that a little bit with what's going on. But I think probably if you want to get like just a 1080p system, I would recommend like a 580. I think they're really good value right now for what you're getting. Say we want just adding this XFS GTS Black on there, it's like 180 quid on there. And then you get to things, I guess, like you want to get a case. What are you going to get? Everyone seems to get the H510 from NZXT. I like this case. It looks nice. My one problem with it is airflow in the front. I think it's very poor. It's cheap. It looks good. So I think people really like it. NZXT is a well-known kind of one, but I actually would rather go for something like a Meshify C on there. I think that's just a nicer proposition. It's got much better airflow. Keep your parts nice and cool, which means you're going to be getting the maximum performance out of them. Could go for like the 510 Elite. Again, a really lovely looking case. I think it's a really, really nice looking case, but I really worry about the airflow on these. As somebody who owns an NZXT S340 Elite, the one kind of before this, I can tell you that the airflow is not ideal. But yeah, cases are just about, again, they're about functionality and looks. There's not really going to be a massive performance upgrade unless you get a really bad airflow one. they're about what you want. So do you want it to be quiet, in which case, Meshify C is not going to be ideal for you? Do you want it to be all singing and dancing fancy RGB, in which case, you're going to want something which is either you're going to buy the fans separately, or you're going to want something which comes with fans. So for example, the Corsair IQ comes with all the fancy fans, looks good, it's got fairly decent airflow on it. It's a pretty good case. Corsair make pretty good cases as a whole. I've had some before and it looks nice, but you're going to be spending £100 on that case. So do you want to spend, would you rather get a case which is say $50 and then you can spend an extra 50 on a graphics card upgrade or a CPU upgrade, or are you just kind of focused on the case? Because I always feel like you can later on you can get a better case, but you will always be stuck with your performance, to a certain extent, because okay, what I'm trying to say is that like $50 will go a long way to helping your performance out. It nearly pays for your RAM at the end of the day. So if you are on a real budget, like just get a budget case at the end of the day. Make sure it's got decent enough airflow and live with that for a little bit, and then when later on you can do it. But I see people who are like, I've got £1,000 budget or whatever, $1,000 budget, and they put in like $100 worth of RGB fans, and you're like, you're really cutting your performance levels to to fit that kind of card. So if you're asking me and saying like what is a great kind of budget case which still looks good, obviously looks are very very much in a kind of they're in the eye of the beholder, and you could, for example, get the silent Antex one. Your airflow is going to be pretty bad, but it's cheap. I've used the 2070R. It's not going to be best in terms of looker, but again, it's fairly quiet. The airflow is not great. It's fairly basic. It's not, you're not going to have your it's not going to be an RGB-a-thon in there, but it's fairly decent. What else have I used, or what else do I know is actually pretty decent? The 510 again is a decent looking case. It's starting to creep up though into your kind of $60, $70 mark on there. So maybe we'll go for the 270R at 63 on there. Power supply. This is important. I always recommend people, say you're buying used parts because you wanted to really get a cheap option, always recommend buy new power supply. What PC Park is really good at is telling you what your estimated wattage is going to be. So this is saying 354. So I don't need a 750 watt power supply. I would probably go safe and go 550. Give yourself a little bit of overhead if you want to do a little bit of overclocking, but in reality, you probably don't need more than a 550 there. You might want to say, well, actually, I'm only going to keep my graphics card for another 6 months, then I'll upgrade. So maybe you want to go 650 on there, just in case you wanted to get like a nicer graphics card or something down the line, and then you wouldn't have to buy a potentially new thing. But I always say to people, don't skimp out on the power supply, because it's the one component where if that goes badly, your whole system goes. And also, do yourself a favor and at least get a semi-modular power supply. Don't get a non-modular one. They have horrible looking cables. You'll regret it. You can save money, sure, on it, but the reality is like a semi-modular, you can get some good prices. Let's have a look. Do they have, here we go, yeah, semi. We'll just choose the semi ones. What sort of prices have we got? And yeah, this has good manufacturers here. Corsair, good. Cooler Master, EVGA, Rosewill, Be Quiet, all make really nice power supplies. So you're looking at kind of like $100 there for a 550. But let's say, for example, we weren't going to go, they are 550s there. So I probably wouldn't go for a 450. I'd probably go 550, and then maybe have like the efficiency rating can be fairly important. So you can get a gold here for under $100, semi-modular. Not bad. And there you go. Pretty much, like, you can choose Windows and monitor and stuff like that separately, but that's kind of $850 there. It's not, in the budget of some people, but that will run pretty well for a while, I think, on there. So that for me feels quite expensive right now, because I think graphics cards and stuff like that are quite expensive. The question is, how much lower is that going to get if you wait? So, for example, what would be worth the wait for some people? So, is that going to go down to $700 in 6 months' time? Probably not, to be completely honest with you. I would imagine that in 6 months' time you might be able to get this for about 750, 770. But did you want to wait that long? It's a really tricky one for what people want and what they do. As I said, I think it's a good time to upgrade some components if you want to, but it's a bad time to upgrade other components on there, really. I like the fact that this also has your price part history as well, which is pretty useful. Yeah, so, I don't think it's a terrible price right now for it. I don't see it going down a huge amount. It's not like this is going to go $500 in a month's time or something like that, and you're going to be like, what have I done? I think it's realistically, you're not going to save a huge amount of money by the time it goes down, but we'll have to wait and see. To be honest, I'll come back probably in a few months' time when these Ampere are, and we'll have a look at some of the prices. If you wanted to go used, yeah, you're going to save money on that, absolutely. But how much money and how at what risk is a completely different matter. And you might be able to find some things cheaper, in sales and things like that, which might be coming about. I would honestly turn around and say probably if you want just an actual PC now, then get an actual PC now and just be prepared that some of the parts might be you might, I don't want to say lose $100 because it doesn't really work like that, but you might be able to in a few months' time get it for like $100 cheaper, but when things kind of return hopefully back to some sort of normality. But the question is, like, if you need a whole PC, then you need a whole PC. It's not like if you're upgrading, if you turn around and go, well, I want to upgrade my graphics card now, I would turn around and say, if you can live with it for another few months, hold off. Don't expect massive savings. Don't expect the graphics card market to crash at any point, because I just don't feel it will. I just have this feeling like when the new ones come out, we're not going to see the performance increase that people are hyping, which won't see the market crash in the way people I think are kind of expecting it to. So I would say, like, if you can live with it, hold off for a bit. But if you really can't, then kind of look out there. Used is a good option if you really can't afford that much, but you do want to get more bang for your buck. If you want to upgrade your RAM, it's a good time. Storage is a good time. CPUs are not terribly priced right now either, to be fair. And remember, if you are building, concentrate on your performance. The rest of the fancy stuff can come kind of later on. You're using a computer to enjoy it. Enjoy it. It doesn't have to be a piece of art there, because when you're playing a game, you're not looking at your PC. You're looking at the monitor and the screen. Spend your money on that. The performance you get, the monitor you get. Don't spend your money on the case, which has got 6 RGB fans in there. It's a ridiculous concept. But yeah, till next time, thanks for watching. I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.